So if you would, what is the game about? Let's collect this together of what this game is actually about.
I would like to answer, but I think somebody else should answer it. Anybody? Somebody. We have among us someone who tried it for 6 times.
Wow.
I could only find time to do it once. I wanted to do it again. Don't have any more time, but then
Impressive.
yeah. Yes, we have people who tried it for multiple times. Come on, everybody.
It's about how to make change.
Yeah, how to make change, how to drive an innovation. What's the goal of the game?
To make you a better change agent.
To get adapter.
Yes.
Adapter.
The more adopters we have, the better.
To find the right support members to start things and then accelerate.
To innovate and improve the teaching and learning, the education system.
Mm-hmm.
Find way to convince people.
Yes. All of the above. And I would like to separate 2 things out. The one is, what are you taking away? And hopefully you will become a more aware change agent. And then there are, of course, goals within the game. As you mentioned, drive an innovation, get as many adopters as possible, try to influence people. So this is a mechanisms of the game to hopefully facilitate the process of making you a better change agent. Now, let me ask you that. Have you become a better change agent?
I would say a better understanding, but not necessarily a better one, because we don't know whether we can remember what we've learned.
Yes. So what has it helped you understand?
To reflect on our previous practice and how we can improve.
And repeating the game as well, make us more understand.
To find as many adopters as possible.
Different actions you should be doing different actions at different phases of the diffusion, depending on whether the kind of people that you have, the number of adopters, or the number of people you're beginning to convince.
Can we say that we need to be a strategist?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a strategy.
Yeah. Finding the right people.
Yeah. Finding the right people.
And those who do not have any impact to your research. I mean, to your objective. Knowing the right person.
Yeah, sometimes they don't have to be adopters, but you have to get to know them to get access to some people.
Through them, yes. And optimize the time as well to get what we want.
And also to be focused.
Yes.
And to identify how much do you really want to make that change.
Yes, it's taking effort, right?
Yeah.
The strategy, coming up with strategies can be frustrating, but it can also mean it's a long period of time, right? The game simulates a long period of time. I mean, in a time wrapper, but it's still like, if you think about it, would you want to spend 2 years on this thing? If you can imagine how much frustration you might have, or how much mini successes you have, or how much you can screw up, right? Like I remember one time I had, I taught this to middle managers, and some of them were very hierarchically oriented. So they just chose the option, well, the superintendent should just declare this is what's going to happen. And they were surprised that nobody listened. That about coalition building and understanding social relationships between people. Let me ask you, oh, I see there's a chat comment.
Chin.
Ah, this is the best result after 5-6.
Chin is my PhD student.
Ah, the one who tried 6 times.
Yes.
So if we, and this is a good segue into that. So there's personalities, of course, involved. In the moment, this is a black box scheme. A black box scheme is defined as you don't really know underlying factors, mechanisms, or algorithms that are being used to produce the results. Unless you play a long time and multiple times, you get a little sense of what's going on, right? You're like, if I do this, this probably will change, or this or that. So every time you learn a little bit more about the system. What do you think you will find if you would open up this, if you make it not a black box, but a glass box, right? You could see the underlying mechanism.
It would be easier to strategize. I mean, it's so funny. Every time I try to talk to the principal, I never get to.
Persuade the secretary.
Yes, even though after I made an appointment with the secretary to talk to the principal, I never get to talk to him. He's always busy and he doesn't have time to talk.
Yes, and what does it make the secretary?
Yeah.
The secretary is a very powerful person then suddenly, right?
Yes.
And this might be true in other situations too. Yeah.
So I talked to the secretary, and then the secretary, even then I couldn't get an appointment. He's so busy. It was funny.
So that was something to, we can jump to that question already and say, so you found it very difficult to talk with the principal.
Yep.
What are other things that people found difficult?
Okay, initially I didn't realize that using the mass media would be so effective in winning over the principal. So every time I couldn't talk to him, I organized get
a media campaign,
people to come, and then I'll get points for the principal. So I got him to be an adopter by not talking to him at all.
Yeah, I think I agree to that, because we save the media for the last resort. Yeah, it seems that this one is not that way, so we have to use the media.
It's probably also different for how you use the media, right? If you go into the media and you have a newspaper reporting on a great innovation in your classroom, that sheds a positive light on the principal. If you go to the media and say, my principal doesn't listen to me, doesn't want my innovation, that's probably bad. The principal doesn't like that. So it's a different type of, different type of interaction. What else was difficult?
It was also difficult to get to organize the workshop without going to the janitor, and that's not quite the same situation here. I mean, here we don't really need to talk to the janitor in order to conduct a workshop. So that was something I thought different, a little bit different, and I found it quite difficult at that time.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel the same thing.
Which is highlighting a little bit also cultural differences, right? So, I mean, I know of many schools and school discussions where you don't have, you don't need the janitor support. And I know in other situations, if the staff is not behind you, it's not working very well.
But the janitor, Johannes, actually symbolizes the gatekeeper, you know,
Yes.
for you to do projects, you know.
Right. And what it communicates, what the game is communicating, your gatekeeper might be somebody you had never thought of, right?
Correct.
That's like, you know, if people, like, this is similar with the lunch mates, right? Who go and meets for lunch, and you suddenly realize a teacher, it has power because they're sitting in so many social circles. That might be not your best teacher, but you know, that person has massive.
Exactly. Everyone is valuable. Everyone is valuable.
Yes. So, anything else that you found difficult?
In my case, when finally I choose compulsion, yeah, you know, it falls, you know, everything breaks apart. Even the principal becomes, quit and work in a, local supermarket. So that's my experience. Towards the end, when I think we can make compulsion, but still it happened, so everybody, in the end, it terribly backfire.
Yes. It's hopefully,
So
I mean,
that's a hard lesson I learned.
yes. And it shows there are some, let's call it nuclear bomb options that really can be either really destructive, right? That's like something, if you do it too early or you not do it right, that can derail the entire innovation. So let's do a quick question on how much does the game resemble what you experience in real life with innovation? As you know, there are always innovations where we have been change agents. If we wanted or not, we might have championed for things. So it might be something super formal, right? You're being on a team and you're asked to implement, but it might be just you try to convince your department to do something. So we all have somewhat experiences being a change agent, smaller, bigger changes. How does this game compare to what you experienced in real life?
In my opinion, there's one option where you said that the game has an option of calling a professor for a talk. I think about 2 weeks a session. But most of the time when I select that option, it says that it is more of a preaching rather than becoming a change agent and then getting people to change. But I think that's what I feel when we are trying to move towards a certain direction. People think that when we are calling a big shots inside the university to give a talk, it will change the mindsets of people. But sometimes it just becomes a preaching and also doesn't have any big impact on the environment inside the university.
It's a really good example also of possibly misjudging what is actually needed, right? If people like, I'm buying it, I think it's a great idea, but I don't know how to, and you invite somebody to talk about how good it is to do it, you're walking away and you're saying, I knew how good it is, but still you didn't give me anything what I can use, right? So this is where the stages of concern play a large role. If you're not aware of something new, an industry expert might be a very great way to invite somebody. If you know what's going on, you don't need that person. You need something completely else. It's a great example of how it matches with real life. What other experience have people had?
I think in my case, I learned this through hard way. Before I do any activity with my student, I will identify their needs and interests, because sometimes what they need, they are not aware about their need, according to what is the requirement of the faculty and what's not. But I need to know what is their perception about their needs and try to match with the needs that they need to comply based on the requirement of the program that they are having, for example, as well as their interests. And if not, whatever activity that I do in class, they find it not meaningful, and therefore they are not interested to engage or to participate in. So it is kind of like waste of time on their parts as well as my part, because sometimes I spend a lot of time to prepare for materials and what's not for the activity, and they don't find it meaningful in for their learning.
Yes. And it can be, in the game, I think this is simulated as you might choose a workshop too early, right?
Yes, yes.
You might choose an intervention too early. Later, so it's and this is the tricky part. Sometimes we do something and then we think this was not good, it wasn't effective, and we change it instead of changing the timing. Maybe it was a different time when this actually would have been more successful, right? We think every time we do something, it seems like perfect timing, and we can improve the content or we can improve the pedagogy. Sometimes the timing is off.
Yes, yeah, Johannes, yes, it is true, because my first attempt, I approached on a big effort, and seems not working. But for the second attempt, I think a mix of approaching people in a big group and individually will give a balance of impact, which is both are important. Some people need individual approach, and for a bigger impact, yes, in a big group, but the timing is important. Yes, and for the second attempt, I managed to get a good a number of adapters.
Anything else in the context of the diffusion game itself? Anything you found noteworthy or something you wanted to share, or questions you still had about what was going on in that particular game?
Professor, it is quite common that people choose compulsion, making things compulsory after some time, yeah? But from the lesson that I learned after doing the game, is it not, when can we actually make things compulsory? Sometimes we get so frustrated, like persuading people, showing example, giving rewards, but things doesn't happen. So you make it compulsory. Either you do it or, like you can get out, but when is that strategy good?
Yes. So there play, of course, now larger cultural context as well a role. It's also a question, what do you have? And compulsory is like a very binary option, right? You either do it or. And when you ask the question, you also a little bit hesitated, right? What is actually the consequence of not doing it when you make it compulsory? That's the biggest problem with compulsory. The biggest problem with compulsory is not that you force something on people. It is you need to specify an equivalent consequence if people don't do it. And usually we cannot follow through, right? If you say to somebody, you teach this way or I fire you, it cannot be an empty threat, right? If they decide then not to do it, you need to fire them. A lot of times we can't do that, and people know that. So they don't do compulsory, right? They say then, oh, come on, I know you can fire me. That's completely different people who do that. Or, you know, if it doesn't have real consequences, if people don't participate, you will not get full participation. It's also, if people are unclear or have concerns about the innovation, like how do you actually do that? And sorry, I don't have enough resources. Compulsion tells them you don't care, right? I don't care about your concerns, you just do it. And if they say, I'm not equipped, I didn't get enough training, I don't know what exactly is expected of me, you tell me I have to do X, there is kind of the work has to be on you as the one who makes it compulsory to really specify what you want. Particularly if at the end, if you don't do it, are harsh consequences. I have found not a single situation where compulsion was producing any positive effect. I either alienated people, and then interestingly enough, we know from organizational literature, if you're being very harsh on the system, the good people leave because they have other options. They can get hired somewhere else. And the people who you try to improve and try to make better or whatever, they can't leave, so they're staying. So you actually have usually, if you're being too prescriptive and too micromanaging and too compulsory about different elements, you end up with the people who want a little bit more freedom and they're good, they're leaving because it's a change of culture, a change of climate. Have you ever, as a group, have you ever seen compulsion work?
No.
I mean, taxes are compulsory, right? We have to pay taxes. At least, consequences are pretty dire if you don't pay taxes. At least here, you can end up in jail and all kinds of things. So that's kind of working.
If you apply compulsion, it will not be sustainable.
Yes.
Yeah. But for the game, the question you were asking earlier, to me, the game resembles what I had been doing, trying to implement innovation. It's just that I find that there seems to be more formal techniques on how to do it, because all this while I've been doing it based on intuition or based on trial and error, talking to people, getting their buy-in, and convincing them that this is the best thing to be doing, and later, putting up more formal programs to actually get it done or executed. But I find that it takes really a long time, it's a long time. So hopefully that by understanding this model, I can understand the underlying theory so that, we can put better strategies, can strategize better towards implementing the change, the innovation, I mean. So one concern I have is that after doing all that, after driving the innovation, how do you actually sustain that innovation? And in the case of active learning, I have actually tried to implement that in my faculty. And we had no expert at all to begin with. And I brought in Prof. Khairia to give that talk. I remember. I wonder if she remembers. So after that, we had a few people who adopted it in the classroom, and I was expecting that this little small group would actually drive others. But there was not enough energy or drive to actually bring the rest of the department towards embracing active learning. So sustaining it is another issue or another concern. Is that a concern? Right. So what are your thoughts on that? How do we sustain the innovation that we have championed for?
I mean, you mentioned one element already. I think critical mass is really important. What is how, can you change a department culture if you have 30 faculty members, 30 instructors, and you have 2 people that champion the innovation? It will probably be very hard. I think it would be interesting to look at it from a perspective of what elements in the system work actually against the innovation. So, for example, any form of active learning always faces the issue of, well, you will not have time to do then all the different content, because active learning is a slowdown in content transmission.
You asked a very valid question there. Sorry to interrupt you, but you asked a very valid question there. What are the elements that are making it not happen? Yeah. We know the elements, but it's very hard to change. It's systemic. It's within the system.
Yes.
Well, for one thing, there's no reward actually for doing active learning. That's the truth. But what I've been usually with the places where I have more engagements with, we will try to inject the scholarship of teaching and learning so that it doesn't only turn the faculty members who are championing it into implementers, but they also become reflective practitioners and they can publish. So once they start publishing, I think publication, being able to publish in journals really light up a lot of lights in Malaysia. I don't know anywhere else.
Yeah.
But once they are able to publish, it becomes more people get attracted to it, because I think that's the only way I can help people to get rewarded for their teaching. And having them publish is good because once they're a reflective practitioner, they begin to, and when they want to write, they begin to read and find new things on their own, and they begin to, begin to be able to sustain themselves and improve with continuous improvements and, publishing and contributing to the community and meeting the community once they start to publish.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. But yet that is another level of innovation to champion for. And that requires a lot of energy, and you need a lot of energy and drive to actually make that happen.
You're absolutely right. All of these, any policy aspect that you might want to implement is then a change mechanism itself, and it requires that, right? I remember we have in a lot of European universities right now, there is a teaching track for becoming full professor. So you are an electrical engineering faculty, but you can go up for promotion either as an electrical engineer with research on whatever you're doing, or you're going up as an established scholar, an established academic who is really good in teaching electrical engineering. They allow now a dual path. The problem with that, so that sounds like really good, right? So people get a reward. What it resulted in was that in the university, amongst the faculty, amongst the professors, the teaching ones are considered second class. Oh, okay, you tried research, it didn't work, so you went to teaching path, which is not necessarily the case, right? Some of them might have said, I'm becoming professor because I want to teach. I want to be a good instructor. I don't want just to do research. But that's the system itself is perverting this really good idea of multiple open pathways. So the pathways exist. It still takes effort for somebody to choose that pathway, because it comes with a stigma. It comes with negative emotions around it. Any final thoughts on the diffusion game? Anything that we didn't touch upon? Any burning things that you were looking for?
I have one peculiar thing that I think is quite, stand out, is that there is no incentive for the players of the agents of the game, like the principal, the teachers. There's no, like when you're leading the innovation, you never tell them the incentives. Like if you do this, if you adopt this technology or adopt this innovation, for example, you'll have, I don't know, maybe a promotion or something like that. There is no that element there. But as the example Professor Kharia mentioned just now, I mean, when she brought the idea of publishing, I see that as an incentive, but somehow in this game it didn't work that way. There's no element of incentive there. So I'm just wondering where where the motivation can come from if it's not from incentives.
So let me even widen your question and say, what's the incentive of the change agent? Why would a teacher pick up a new pedagogy or particular pedagogical model and drive that, right? So the change agent starts already also without much incentive. Maybe it's leadership in the field, maybe it's recognition. The game, and I would agree with you, the game has very little to give to incentives. I think the biggest incentive we mentioned already is the principal likes to be in a good newspaper article about his school or her school. That's an incentive for the principal. The others, it's a good question. Is it presuming that you want to do a better thing? And that's intrinsic, right? You don't need an extrinsic factor like rewards or recognition from outside. You just want to become a better teacher. Are we buying that assumption that people want to become better teachers? I know a lot of faculty who just want to become better teachers. They just don't know how. I know also some faculty who I doubt that they want to become better teachers. They're begrudgingly, right? They reluctantly see teaching, they want to do research, and teaching, unfortunately, is part of the job package. But it's a really good question. Do we need extrinsic, external incentives in order to make change happen? What do you think?
Well, John Biggs say assessment drives learning. And from faculty members, I've seen, especially with the younger faculty members, that how they are assessed really drive their action. I don't know. Prof. Fatin, she's heading the School of Education. I think she'll be able to see this better. I don't know. There's a lot of quite young faculty members here. What do you think?
I was just thinking, the change, the incentive that mentioned just now on the change agent incentive. I think the change agent doing it out of passion, so they don't even think it was never, it doesn't cost, it didn't cross their mind on, what kind of incentive for them. So that's why you become a change agent. But those who are actually the target people that we want to make that change, and those are the ones who are actually thinking about the to have that incentives. And
yeah, and the third one is the job of the instructional leaders, like us, to recognize their effort, to make sure that we can propel, this innovative culture among not only the young ones, but also maybe the seniors can also see it,
It's not really problematic with those passionate teachers or those teachers who actually, they have the heart in the teaching. I mean, but when we, for example, we are in the university setting where there are two tracks where, there are some lecturers who are, maybe passionate in teaching, or there are another where they may be disinterested in teaching. They just focus on one research. So for passionate teachers is okay, but for those who are indifferent, like I think in the game it was the boys, or was it the PG teacher? Yeah, the physical
education teacher. Yeah.
And then I think one of the chairman, I think a social studies chairwoman also, well, she just follow whatever works at that time. If it's not working, then so these are the people that I'm concerned about, because in my game, in my simulation, is that these people who actually sabotaged my adopters. I got like 10 or 12 adopters before, and then I threw the dice, and then some of these people just, sabotaging all my, yep. So yeah, so these people are the groups that I thought that might need some kind of clear external, incentives. Rather than just say that, hey, this innovation will do good for your students, will do good for your promotion somehow. So it's not clear to them, and then also it's not clear for me also to how to actually influence these group of people.
So there's a couple of comments, and the one is what the game doesn't do very well is that it ignores that every one of these players, every one of these actors has a history with 100 other innovations, right? Every year something comes and gets pushed in the classroom, and every principal change, and the next principal really loves group work, and the next principal really loves study teams of teachers. So there is a bit of an innovation fatigue in the sense of they all have a history with how innovations went, right? And like when a teacher who is a champion, and I'm involved in a project in which we do 3D modeling and printing with teachers. And we ask schools to have at least 4 or 5 champions. Because we had so many times a school that had like one champion, they got all the money because it was seen as cool and innovative, and then they left. And the school was really disillusioned about it. We spent so much money, now these printers stand around, nobody else knows how to use them. So I would expect the next time a technological innovation comes to that school, people remember and say, the last one was a terrible idea and terrible execution, and I'm not really interested. So this notion of we all carry histories with us, that's one element. And the game, doesn't really tell us that. And then the other aspect is how many innovations actually simultaneously go on. Because what we describe when we say, well, we want passionate teachers, maybe another teacher is super passionate about wet labs or nature learning, and the innovation is here and the teacher's passion is here. Yes, they are not passionate about what I'm bringing or what the change agent is bringing, but they are very passionate about something else. And so do we allow actually an ecosystem or an diversity in our ecosystem of what people can be passionate about. And yeah, if they're not passionate about anything that we know is good pedagogy, that's problematic, right? If I'm like, I really love lecturing all the time, and we know it might work for some students and not for many others, might be problematic. But you know, there's a passion behind that, and maybe they work on that. So we can't ignore them in their own context, in the context of multiple innovations and their own history with innovations. And maybe they got burned. They picked it up early, and then people left and things changed, and or they get, you know, disillusioned, never changed anything. I was a champion 2 years ago for something and it didn't work out. Why am I supporting you now? All right, this is actually a really good segue. I'm also cognizant about time, so I'll just introduce something briefly and then we'll take a little break. This is a lot what we actually talked about is that, and this comes from a model by Rogers on diffusion of innovation, the bottom part. The top part is what people consider the hype cycle of technology adoption. So Rogers' model assumes there are people that are innovators, there are early adopters, there's an early majority, there's a late majority, in their laggards. Laggards would be the ones who will never take it up, no matter what you're doing. It's interesting that the primary focus oftentimes is in this space. We are focusing on people to innovate, to pick it up and do it, and the ones who try out new things. That's usually our main target crowd. It's interesting that the early maturity is actually the bulk of your people in this model. What do they need in order to adopt? It's interesting, what they need is innovators and early adopters so they can watch them. When it works for them, then they are very happy to try it out themselves. Now, it's interesting, from research, we know another thing. So the first thing we know is the early majority needs people to watch, otherwise they're not adopting themselves. The second thing, and this comes with the sustaining part of an innovation, we know that, let's say you start an innovation now in your faculty, in your department. You will have people who start it and try it, and these ones watch and adopt a little bit later. If you're looking 3-4 years later, what do you predict will happen when you look? What do you think? So you have innovators start. After a while, you have early adopters and early majority join them, and this innovation is going on. And you come back 3 years later. What do you think happened? Any guesses?
Might be lots of interest.
Could be lots of interest. The biggest thing is the innovators not doing it anymore because they went to the next innovation. The early majority, once they are convinced it's a good thing and they try it and it works, they stay on the innovation. They do it for a long period of time. The innovators, they need something new and they're moving out. They're doing the next thing. So working only on innovators and early adopters gives you a spike, and this is done here, the peak of inflated expectation, right? The new MacBook Pro comes out, everybody wants it, that's the innovation. Then you have the trough of disillusionment where it's crashing, it's not as good as you expected, for example, and then you slowly build up a certain pool, and then you have a plateau of productivity.
Yeah.
If you take that overlaying this with this model, you will find that people, that in order to keep an innovation sustainable, you actually have to work around these people, and most of our professional development is not aimed at these people.
Johan, sorry, can I add? I remember what I was trained is if you can get those early adopters among influencers or leaders, that would help to spike the adoption for early majority and late majority. I think it works also in this context, right?
Yes. It's like, it's similarly to the game that we had, that you need people who say, sure, I'm trying it. I have no idea if it works. They might be more risk friendly. They might be adventurous. They might just be, they're bored of what they're doing right now. They don't care what other people think, right? Whatever the characteristics are, you need them because others need to see examples. And then they pick it up if it works. If they see, wow, this is actually looks really cool, I didn't know. Because they are hesitant, right? The early maturity, late maturity, they're hesitant. They're not picking up everything. They
wait and see. Yeah.
Say it again.
They're basically doing the wait and see, looking at the early adopters and the innovators.
Yes, wait and see approach. Yep. And once they've seen it, then they're using it. They will refine it. They use it for a long period of time.
Correct.
I'm stopping here right now. We'll come back to this slide after the break. We have a break till 1:45, whatever hour you're aiming right now for. I'm aiming for 9:00 p.m. So you're aiming for 10 in the morning right now?
Oh, that will give us a 30-minute break.
Oh, what do you say? I'm suggesting just 10.
Well, can we just say that we're off to a 10-minute break and then come back?
Yes, that sounds great.
Okay, so 10 minutes.
Stretch your legs,
everybody.
Exercise.
Yeah, get up. Okay, thank you, Johannes. This is very interesting.
Okay, see you soon.
Yep.